Now that we've finished all this polishing and gel coat repair, let's just kind of recap everything and go over what we did for the polish. It's a lot of steps, guys. I know I've said this 1,000 times, but it's a lot of steps. So what I'm going to do is go over line by line, so that way you guys have everything lined out exactly how this works. So first step is sanding, and there's a lot of sanding involved. The first grit that we used on this boat was 600 grit. Now sometimes you will use less, like 1,000 grit or higher. By the way, sandpapers, the lower the grit, the more coarse it is, the higher the grit, the more fine it is. We started with 600 because this boat had been sitting in the elements for many, many years. So what we started off with was a 600 grit sandpaper, and I used 3M just because it's the best, it's just hands down. Then with 3M, you know what you're getting and it doesn't break down as you're using it. Where a lot of the cheap stuff I was getting from Harbor Freight for a while, man, I tell you, it was breaking down and I couldn't use it very well. So stuck with that. So we did the whole boat with 600. Some of the places, like a lot of the black, we went back over with 800, because the 600, what you're trying to do is you're trying to go from basically a coarse grit all the way to a very fine grit to get rid of all the sand scratches. The 800 takes off all the oxidation and everything. Then you need to go to, I'm sorry, the 600, then the 800, you're starting to take away your sand scratches then. So you go from 800, then we go up to 1,000, do the whole boat that way. Notice this is empty. We used an entire pack of, actually 2 or 3 packs of 1,000. Then you go to a 1,500. This is available in big sheets, but we bought it in the small sheets because we didn't use it everywhere. We use it mostly on our black because the black shows your sand scratches the worst. 320. Yes, I used 320 on some of these places because we had some real deep gouges. I needed to get rid of it. When you use 320, it is a whipping to get rid of all of the sand scratches. It takes a lot of work on the 600 and the 800 and 1,000 to get rid of all your sand scratches, but sometimes you got to do this. Now, with 320, you have to be very, very careful not to go through your gel coat. If you sand too much and go through it, you're going to have to do what I did on the back and respray it. Okay. One thing you have to remember with sandpaper is you really need to use a sanding block or a sanding pad on the back. What this does is it helps you level out the paint much better, the gel coat. Without that, you're going to get sanding like grooves when you do your fingers in there. So you want to always use one of these things whenever you're sanding, because it just makes it much better overall. So once you're done with the sanding, now you move on to the polishing. So we have now I don't know how many steps we've just talked about, 4 or 5 steps, something like that. So by the time now you're really tired, and now you get to start the sanding. You get to start the polishing. So the next step is your wool bonnet, which is this guy right here. This will separate the men from the boys on your polisher. We had a couple of polishers here. We got this one down here. We basically as a Velcro backing, you put this guy on here, and we use a base coat, clear coat, cleaner polish. Now this is almost like toothpaste. This stuff actually has some grit to it, and it's going to help get rid of the sand scratches that you've already done with the sanding. So you do it with the bonnet, and this is your step all over the boat. So once you're done with that, you wipe everything down, kind of keep it nice and wipe off all the excess. One thing to always do is always keep your water handy. This kind of helps if your bonnet gets kind of sticky and gummy. When you spray the water on it, it kind of helps disperse some of the buildup that you get on your wool bonnet. So once you're done with the wool bonnet, you go to your yellow pad. You're going to use the exact same polish that you use with the wool bonnet. It's just on a finer pad. This is almost like a finer cut sandpaper, so you're taking it that next level. Once you've done the entire boat and wiped off all your excess, you switch over to your fine pad. Now this is a very, very fine quality. I mean, it's almost like velvet. And you switch to a finer abrasive polish. If you look at these, what I love about Automagic is if you look right here, they have a meter on it that actually tells you how abrasive it is. So that's fairly abrasive, and this is not really abrasive at all. So you want to go stepping up just like you did in your sandpaper, and by doing that you go up in your polishing pads. So you're going to go over the entire boat. And I tell you, when you do it with this stuff, you see all of a sudden all your work kind of just shows. It's just amazing. The black turns blacker, the whites are whiter, everything is much, much prettier. You do the entire boat with this stuff, and then what I do is I finish up with the black pad in a little bit of water just to kind of disperse everything nice and neat and make it super, super smooth. So once you've done all that, you're still not finished. You want to go back over and have lots of these type of little rags. These rags enable you to just wipe in all the crevices and kind of give it a quick buff to see where you are. We've got about 4 or 5 of these and we used them the whole time. Make sure that once they dry, you kind of shake them out because they're going to get all dusty and nasty. You want to keep turning them all the time just so that way you're not putting, you know, material back on there. So once you're done with the polishing side of it, now we get to put some wax down. I use the same thing, we use the Auto Magic. This is their strawberry wetbacks, and yes, it does smell like strawberries. All I did was I just put it on some rags and wiped it on there, just like you've been putting on the stuff for your cars for years. You put it on there, let it dry to a haze, and then you wipe it back off. That puts the protection in the gel coat that keeps it from going dull again. If we just polished it and left it alone, put it out in the sun, within a few weeks it'd go dull again. So this wax actually keeps it nice and wet looking for much, much longer. But you've got to keep putting this on. But actually, we're still not finished. Once we're done reassembling the whole boat, we're actually going to go back over it with a new type of pad. This is the ultra fine pad and this wax. But that's going to be the final thing that we do. I call this detail for retail. It's just before we put it up for sale, we'll put this on it. It kind of gives you that nice, beautiful, wet look. More than you can do when you're putting it up by hand. But this is what we're saving for the very, very last step. So guys, that's everything when it comes to the polishing. The gel coat stuff, that was pretty self-explanatory about how you spray it on, you sand it down, polish it off. It's the exact same thing. It's a very long, drawn-out process, and I can't say I ever want to do it again. It was difficult. So everything is done now as far as the beautification is concerned. We're ready to get back into the structure, get the bulkheads put back and tabbed in, get the seat bases in, and get the engine mounts on. So we're going to get right back to all the nitty-gritty in a couple of weeks.